So you've finished your batch purification of your protein, and you've got your eluted protein right now that's sitting in elution buffer. Now the problem with that is it's super high in salt, super high in imidazole, and it's not going to be really ideal for doing any downstream applications, whether it's protein binding, enzyme assays, whatever it might be. So we're going to need to do some cleanup of that. How we do that is with dialysis. So at its core, dialysis is going to take our solution and put it in a dialysis bag. And then we're going to put that big bag into a large volume of what we wish our protein was in. In this case, it's going to be protein storage buffer. We basically let that sit for probably 24 hours in the fridge, and that's going to allow those two solutions to equilibrate, because the dialysis tubing has holes that are too big for our protein to get through, but small enough that salts and other small molecules can pass back and forth so that they equilibrate with one another. So we've got a 10x solution of our protein storage buffer, which is really great because we're going to dilute this 1 to 10 to make a liter of our protein storage buffer. Because you use about a liter every time that you're going to do this dialysis, we want to dialyze against a very large volume. It's nice having a stock solution that you can just dilute some from. So our dialysis tubing is over here. This is kind of by our station here where we do our cell plating. And so right now we don't have a ton of different options, but here's our dialysis tubing. It is a dry tubing, so we're going to need to sort of rehydrate this first. Think of it like if you left your contact lenses out. They totally get kind of dry and brittle. And these look like chip clips, but they are dialysis tubing clips. So we're going to get some of this out, and then we're going to put some of our protein storage buffer that's diluted to 1x in here, and then we'll be ready to go. So depending on how many elution samples you've collected, you may have more or less than we have here. And because we have different amounts of protein likely in these, I'm going to keep them separate for right now. You can see that we probably have the most protein. This looks the greenest in our first elution. Second elution is a little bit paler green, and so forth. But I want to keep these separate so we can actually quantitate how much protein we got off of each elution, and that'll allow us to determine whether in future we just want to pool these all together, or maybe keep one by itself, but we can pool everything that comes afterwards together. So I'm going to keep them separate for right now. So I'm going to create 3 dialysis bags for this. So this does not need to be exact, but I'm going to take 100 milliliters of this protein storage buffer. This is a 10x solution, so if I'm making a liter of 1x, I'm going to take 100 milliliters of my 10x, and then I'm going to dilute it to a liter. So I'm just going to use the markings on this beaker for that. So I'm going to come over here and just use my GI water here to dilute this to 1,000 milliliters and have my 1x working solution. So we can readjust the calculations on this video later because I'm not 100% certain. But right now I'm going to measure approximately 15 centimeters here. And I'm going to make 3 of these bags. So I'm going to cut a piece of dialysis tubing that's about 15 centimeters, and that should be good to hold about 5 milliliters. So maybe it's about a 3 centimeter to 1 millimeter sort of situation. I'm just going to put it in here so that we get it so that it's sort of rehydrating. So I'm going to measure out 3 of these, and it's not an exact science, but I want to get all 3 of these bags to be about the same size. So the dialysis tubing has been pretty well hydrated here. I'm just kind of taking it and kind of moving it back and forth, almost like if you've got like a shopping bag that you need to separate because the plastic's stuck together. So I'm getting this here so that I can separate this. I'm just going to use a little pipette here, pipetter, to kind of make sure that I've got this bag completely opened from top to bottom. There's nothing worse than trying to pour your stuff into this bag or get this stuff into your bag and you realize that the plastic is still kind of stuck together. So this one is nice here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a clip on one end of the bag here. Okay, so I probably am leaving, I don't know, maybe about 1/4 of an inch there, and I'm just going to clip that closed. Okay, and then what we'll do is we're going to add our solution. I'm going to just use a pipetter here to pipette it out and put it in here, and then we're going to put another clip on the other end. All right, so now we're ready to take our sample that's in the elution buffer, and we're going to put it into here. And this can be a part that's a little bit scary because you're literally kind of dumping it into a bag here. So the nice thing with these clips is they kind of have things float. So you're going to pick this up and sort of just run your finger down here. It'll get any of the excess buffer out. And then you're going to kind of run your fingers back and forth to kind of try to get this bag so that it's got an open part on the top where you can sort of see a hole, see an opening. And you kind of want it to be able to kind of stand open a little bit on its own. And it's tough because it's like saran wrap, it wants to stick together. Okay, so now I have this so that this is open here. And what I'm gonna do is come over here with just my pipetter. I'm gonna pipette this up and make sure when you put your pipette in here, you're gonna slowly release and you're gonna see it go into the bag. And I can already see here our calculations for the size of the bag that we needed were probably an overestimation. Make sure that I can still have this open here because I'm seeing that we're not filling the bag. I'm going to just leave a little bit that's in there so that we can use it for sort of gel analysis. And this is again one of these scary things that you want to make sure that your pipetter is inside the bag before you release your stuff. Looks like Gatorade, doesn't it? But yeah, you can see that we definitely had more than enough volume there. But what I'm going to do is get rid of as much of the air as possible. Kind of want to have this be nice and tight here. Okay, it's okay to have a little bit of an air bubble in there, but then I'm going to take my other clip and I'm going to clip it at the top. And then we've got our stuff kind of contained within this bag. And then it's just going to kind of sit in here. And we're just going to let it sit. Sometimes you can actually put a stir plate underneath to allow this this storage buffer solution to circulate a little bit better. But since we're going to do this for 24 hours, it should be good. Now you might wonder, do I need to get a new pipetter to do my next sample? Remember, even though these might have different concentrations of protein, they're still the same protein. So there really shouldn't be any reason that you needed to get a new pipetter. I can just go from my most concentrated one into my next one. So we've been waiting 24, it's actually been 48 hours here since we did our dialysis. So we're going to grab our dialysis. It's been just sitting in the fridge, and we're going to carefully take our sample back out of the dialysis bags, and then we'll be ready to go on to the next step. So our dialysis literally just sits here in the fridge. And that's, again, anytime we do anything with our proteins, we want to make sure that we keep it at a cold temperature to minimize any degradation, or hopefully there's no more proteases in there. So what we're going to do now is we are going to carefully take our protein back out from here. So you can kind of see here that our protein is still contained within the dialysis tubing because the protein is too large to come out. So it's nice having that green fluorescent protein to see that. But all the salts have equilibrated. So that high concentration of imidazole, the high concentration of sodium chloride has equilibrated with this liter of protein storage buffer, which is low salt but slightly buffered to keep the protein stable. So this part can get a little bit nerve-wracking because we essentially have a bag that has our stuff sort of sitting in it. So what we want to do here is we want to kind of get as much of the water as we can off. There's a couple of ways that you can handle this. You want to be careful when you unclip it here because if you drop the bag, you can spill your stuff out. Okay. If you start feeling really comfortable, what you can do is sort of fold the bag over a couple of times, kind of make it so it's almost like you have a little tube. And I can come over here, I can put the end of the tube inside here, and I can slowly let my stuff pour out into here. Okay, so it can get really scary when you're doing this because if the bag's not in there well, you can lose some of your stuff. But that's one way to do it. I'm going to show you another way. You can do this in a second if you're a little bit scared with this. Okay, I'm going to keep these same caps that we had from when we did our dialysis just because they've got nice labels that are on them. Okay, so that's that one. Another option that we can do here, and we actually had to double these over here. So I know which one's which because I doubled the bag. Okay, so This is number 2. I'm going to put a clip back on here and put this one back in. Another option, if you are a little bit concerned, you can just take a pipette and you can open up the bag a little bit. I actually think this way is a little bit harder, but it's, I think, maybe less scary. You can take this and put your pipette down inside. I think this is harder. And you can suck your stuff up this way. I actually feel like I'm more likely to drop it this way. So that is an option if you want, but I'm going to take this one and do the same thing that I did before. Again, I'm going to just kind of fold this over, and I'm folding it over so that I get it so that it's small enough that I can kind of get get it down inside here. Now, if I had different proteins, I certainly would want to make sure that I would wash my hands or something between so that I wouldn't cross-contaminate. But this is all the same protein, just different concentrations from different sort of elution or different times that we eluted. All right. So there's that one. All right. And so I'll do the last one here, but that's how you can get your stuff back out of the dialysis bags. So you can kind of see we definitely have more protein in this first one that we eluted, and then it gets a little bit less green and less green. So we're actually going to quantitate that. That's going to be our next step, and we'll actually see how much protein is there. But the materials that we have here, the clips are reusable, so we can just kind of take the rest of these clips off of the dialysis tubing. The dialysis tubing is a single-use item, so you can just kind of get these washed off in there. And then that protein storage buffer, unless we had another protein we were sort of immediately ready to do some dialysis with, we probably would just dispose of this down the drain. That's the downside of dialysis, is you do use quite a bit of buffer to do this exchange process.